G'day, Justin Hogg here from Right Source, talking all things governance and not-for-profits. I wanted to share, I'll talk through a scenario that we've had a few organisations move from an association to a company limited by guarantee, which we've done some videos on previously, but this is a more specific question regarding the role of treasurer. And treasurers at associations wanting to understand what the implications would be in moving to a company limited by guarantee for their individual role as treasurer. I suppose that's what we're going to talk about today. So a treasurer in an association has, almost if you look at it, two roles. They're essentially the CFO for the organisation, so they will often do everything from, or they can do, especially for smaller associations, everything from keeping the books right through to the financial strategy. So they'll do the whole finance side of the organisation. Now, the treasurer is still a position that sits on the management committee of an association, so it still has a role within that management committee. So it has two key roles. The important thing to remember here is that the role on the management committee, essentially that's your board role. And that role is to make sure the organisation runs, and that's your duty. Now, everyone else on that management committee, and this is something that's important, I think, for all associations, still has a responsibility to understand the financials. They don't need to do it, but if you're on the management committee, you need to understand what's going on, because you still, as a member of that management committee, have responsibilities to make sure the organisation is run successfully and financially well as well, which is also meaning not trading insolvent and those type of things. Now, it's fine if you're relying on the treasurer to get that work done, but as a member of the management committee, you still are required to make sufficient inquiry to make sure that they are doing their job appropriately. You can't just go, well, that's the finance guy, we'll let him or her to go off and do the finances. You actually need to be, as a part of that committee, assure that you know that it's being done correctly and that things are being taken care of. So with that sort of context, when you move or look to move from an association to a company limited by guarantee, what's the implications on the treasurer role? Well, the first part, if you look at that operational role, that pseudo CFO role that the treasurer does in an association, that can still exist as an executive role in a company limited by guarantee, like a CFO. Now, in smaller company limited by guarantee organizations, you will still have executive directors, where a director is a director, but they have an executive role as well, like the CFO. So you could still have that CFO role. Now, that role would be a position description, same sort of thing, which ideally you should have for the treasurer as well, and that can still exist. With moving from a management committee as in an association to then a board at a company limited by guarantee, and going from a treasurer to a director, essentially what you're moving is your board or your management committee level responsibilities. Now, as we said, in the treasurer, your responsibility is still to make sure the organisation runs. The director has exactly the same responsibilities. So the actual responsibilities of a director versus a treasurer in terms of their board or management committee responsibilities are exactly the same. So nothing changes from that responsibility. Now, what might change is that your reasoning for moving to a company limited by guarantee is you're getting larger, or although that's not necessarily a reason to change, you don't have to change. Or it might just be for some other reason in terms of wanting to trade outside of the state that you're based in. And there's a whole nother video on why you might do these changes, but say you're making this change. It may also mean that you're looking to employ someone to do like the bookkeeping or a CFO or something like that. So you don't need a director to be the treasurer to do that operational roles. Yes, things might change, but if anything, what's likely to happen is the treasurer role that you had in the association might actually reduce its responsibility as you move to a company limited by guarantee, just because of the way your organisation starts to structure. Now, the last sort of permutation to that is, well, we're going to set up this company limited by a guarantee, but we're also going to set up a finance committee, and the person who's the treasurer is now going to be the chair of that finance committee. What does that mean? You still boil it back down to your responsibility as a director or as a committee member of an association is the same. You're there to make sure the company operates in a way that is safe, doesn't hurt anybody, doesn't trade insolvent. That's your responsibility. Now, as a director, if you're given a role to chair a committee, that committee doesn't take any responsibility away from the board. It's set up to help dive into more detail, to be more efficient in terms of understanding what's going on. But ultimately, a committee, generally speaking, doesn't make any decisions. It still comes back to the full board. The full board needs to be responsible for and clear on what's going on. Whether they're doing the work or not, they need to be across it. Yes, the treasurer can often become a chair of a finance committee. Does it change their role? No. Does it increase their responsibilities? No, it does not. I think one of the big things that treasurers especially fear is that, well, I'm already doing all this work as an association. We're moving to a company by limited by guarantee, which sounds more complicated. I can't afford my role to get bigger. That's all I can do. Well, I think, I suppose, my assurance for those treasurers in these organizations is your role won't get bigger in that transition. And if anything, it gives you an opportunity to clarify your role and potentially make your role maybe a little bit more contained in terms of the director role. So that's probably my thoughts to share on the transition from an association to a company limited by guarantee and the impact it has on the treasurer position. I hope you liked the video. If you're interested in more governance or not-for-profit videos, we've got a whole chunk on our YouTube site. Feel free to check those out. Otherwise, thanks for taking the time to watch. It's been Justin Hogg from RightSource.